Think of ancient warriors, and who comes to mind? Roman legionaries? Spartan hoplites? Maybe even Viking raiders? For centuries, history has been dominated by tales of heroic men. But what if I told you that some of the most feared and respected warriors in history were women? Today, we're diving deep into the forgotten sagas of the warrior women who terrified ancient empires. Let's start in the windswept steppes of Eurasia, home to the Scythians. The ancient Greeks, like the historian Herodotus, wrote about them with a mix of fear and fascination. For a long time, scholars thought their stories of fierce female archers on horseback were just myths, the inspiration for the Amazons. But modern archaeology tells a different story. Excavations of Scythian burial mounds, or kurgans, have uncovered skeletons of women buried with the full honors of a warrior. We're talking bows, arrows, swords, and daggers. These weren't just ceremonial items. Forensic analysis shows battle scars, arrowheads lodged in bone, and the kind of muscular development you only get from a life of riding and fighting. These weren't just women who could fight. They were women who did fight and died fighting, right alongside the men. They were the real-life Amazons, skilled horse archers who could ride circles around their enemies, raining down arrows with deadly precision. Imagine facing a cavalry charge where a third of the warriors are women, every bit as deadly as their male counterparts. That was the reality for anyone who dared to challenge the Scythians. Now, let's journey west to the misty shores of Britain, where the Roman Empire was expanding its grip. In the year 60 AD, one woman led a rebellion that nearly drove the Romans off the island entirely. Her name was Boudica, queen of the Iceni tribe. After the Romans flogged her and assaulted her daughters, Boudica didn't just mourn, she rose. Uniting several Celtic tribes under her banner, she unleashed a storm of vengeance. The historian Tacitus describes her as a towering figure with a fierce gaze and a harsh voice, her long red hair flowing down to her waist. She wasn't just a figurehead, she was a war leader. Her army, fueled by righteous fury, sacked and burned 3 major Roman cities, including Londinium, what we now call London. The scale of the destruction was immense. Boudica's warriors were known for their ferocity, using long swords and fighting from war chariots, a terrifying sight for the disciplined but often inflexible Roman legions. Although the rebellion was eventually crushed, Boudica's name became legendary. She proved that a woman's fury could shake the foundations of the world's mightiest empire. She remains a powerful symbol of freedom and resistance to this day. Let's sail across the Mediterranean to the Kingdom of Kush in modern-day Sudan. This powerful African kingdom had a long line of warrior queens, known by the title Kandake, which translates to Queen Mother or Great Woman. These weren't queens who sat on a throne while men did the fighting. The Kandakes were commanders-in-chief. One of the most famous was Amanirenas. In the 1st century BC, when the Romans, fresh from conquering Egypt, tried to push south into her territory, Amanirenas met them head-on. She personally led her army into battle against the Roman legions. In one daring raid, her forces even captured the head of a statue of Emperor Augustus, which they buried under the steps of a temple so everyone would symbolically trample on the Roman leader's head. Talk about a statement. Amanirenas, who was described as being blind in one eye, likely from a battle injury, fought the Romans to a standstill. After years of brutal fighting, the Romans, realizing they couldn't conquer Kush, signed a peace treaty that was highly favorable to the Kushites. Amanirenas didn't just resist Rome, she won. She secured her kingdom's borders and its independence, a feat few others could claim. Now let's head east to the lands of what is now Vietnam in the 3rd century AD. Here we find Tru Thi Trinh, or Lady Tru. As a young woman, she watched her people suffer under the rule of the Chinese Wu dynasty. But she refused to accept a life of servitude. When her brother tried to discourage her from rebelling, she famously said, "I only want to ride the wind and walk the waves, slay the big whales of the eastern sea, clean up our frontiers, and save the people from drowning. Why should I imitate others, bow my head, stoop over, and be a slave? Why should I resign myself to menial housework?" At just 20 years old, she gathered an army of over 1,000 rebels. Legends say she was 9 feet tall, rode into battle on a war elephant, and wore golden armor, wielding 2 swords at once. While some of this is likely mythological embellishment, the core of the story is true. For months, Lady True and her army inflicted defeat after defeat on the Chinese forces, liberating dozens of citadels. Her rebellion terrified the occupying army, who supposedly said it was easier to fight a tiger than to face Lady True in battle. Though her revolt was eventually suppressed, she became an immortal hero in Vietnamese culture, a symbol of defiance against foreign domination. Back in Europe, let's look at the Vikings. We all have the image of the big, bearded Viking man with an axe. But was that the whole picture? For a long time, the idea of female Viking warriors, or shield maidens, was dismissed as fantasy, something from the sagas and poems. But just like with the Scythians, archaeology is forcing us to reconsider. The most famous example is the Birka warrior grave. Discovered in Sweden in the late 1800s, it was the tomb of a high-ranking warrior, buried with a sword, an axe, spears, arrows, and 2 horses. For over a century, it was assumed the skeleton was male. But in 2017, a DNA analysis proved the warrior was, in fact, biologically female. This discovery sent shockwaves through the historical community. It suggests that at least some women in the Viking Age could and did achieve the highest ranks as professional warriors. She wasn't just buried with weapons. She was buried as a commander, a strategist, with a full set of game pieces for planning battles found in her lap. This wasn't an anomaly. Other graves of women buried with weapons have been found across Scandinavia. The sagas tell of shield maidens like Lagertha, who fought alongside the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok. Maybe those stories weren't just stories after all. From the Scythian archers and the Kandakes of Kush to Boudica, Lady True, and the Viking shield maidens, history is filled with incredible women who defied the expectations of their time. They were leaders, strategists, and frontline fighters who commanded respect and instilled fear in the hearts of their enemies. Their stories were often forgotten, dismissed as myth, or overshadowed by the tales of men. But as we uncover more evidence, their legacies are being restored. They remind us that courage, strength, and the will to fight for one's people and freedom are not qualities exclusive to any one gender. These warrior women didn't just fight battles, they shattered the mold of what a woman could be. Thanks for watching. If you found these stories as incredible as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Let me know in the comments which of these warrior women inspires you the most. See you next time.